I remember earlier on when we were talking, you said you initially wanted to be an attorney, which means you had dreams and aspirations different from what you are currently doing, although you're doing well. But give me your background in terms of upbringing, where it all started, and take us through, paint a story, a picture for us.
So when I was in Standard 5, which is now grade 7, they chose 50 girls out of the then Transvaal. Now, I mean, this was a long time ago, to go and study electronics in high school in Potchefstroom. So I was one of the 50 girls, and it was a totally different thing. So from Standard 6, we only had maths, science, electronics, technical drawings, Afrikaans and English. We didn't have any of the other subjects. And I loved technical drawings. It was fantastic. Then when I finished matric, I didn't know what to go and study. So I applied for a whole host of courses at university. And I said to my dad, okay, the one that they accept me for is the one I will go and study. Now, I applied for architecture and physiotherapy and BSc electronics, BSc engineering, all of these various things. And I got accepted for everything.
Oh, you're a smart kid.
And then I didn't know what. I said to my dad, what must I go and study? He says, how must I know? So I made a deal with him.
How many subjects? How many courses were those?
I applied for about 7.
Different courses?
Different courses.
Because some of them are unrelated. Occupational therapy?
Yes. I mean, architecture. But the only one that they approved me for a BA law or a BCom law, but not a pure BCom. So obviously my bookkeeping skills, they could then see were not good. But I was accepted for all of them. So then I said to my dad, I want to make a deal with him. I want to go and work for a year. And if I work for a company for a week and I don't like it, I'm leaving. And he said, that's fine, but you have to qualify yourself in what you're going to do. And I went straight to the newspapers. Mm-hmm. I was always fascinated with newspapers and with advertising. And I worked in the newspapers for 6 months, and then I moved over to a financial advertising agency. And we did advertising for companies listed on the stock exchange. So I did the listing documents, annual reports, advertising, financial advertising, and I loved it. It was hard work, but my dad had a construction company, and I kept on asking him, I want to come into the construction company with you. And he kept on saying, no, construction is not a place for a woman. And then one year we went to the Star Home Show. Now, they don't have the Star Home Show nowadays anymore, but they used to have, when they launch a new development, they would get 10 builders to build 10 houses. People would come and look at the houses and buy stands. And we were walking through the Star Home Show, and Montague Homes had built houses there. And my dad said, oh, so by the way, do you know the CEO of Montague Homes is a woman? Well, my dad and I had a huge fight in the middle of the street. And I said to him, if she can head up a construction company, why can't I work for you? Another couple of years, and eventually he said, okay, come into the business with me. He got a huge contract. He got a big contract from ABSA to build something like 150 houses for them. And he needed the admin and the NHBRC and everything taken care of. So then I joined him in the construction company, and I loved every minute of it. The day I started working for him, he started building a house. And he said to me, you will go to site every day. Some days you will be there for an hour, other days you'll be there for the whole day. And from day one, he would say to me, the bricklayer is setting out the house skew. And I was like, how do you know? And he would teach me. Then he would say to me, go back to the office, go and measure how much steel we must order for the foundations and how much concrete we must order. So I learned from the ground up. He taught me that you don't plaster a wall that gets afternoon sun in the afternoon. You plaster that wall in the morning. You don't plaster a wall this side if the wind is blowing from this side. You wet the plaster. All of those things I learned. Then he would say to me, the bricklayer did this wrong. We're going to have this type of crack there. And then later, when my dad became too old to run a construction site, and we closed the construction company and opened the inspection business, we would do inspections and he'd say to me, you see that crack? The bricklayer did this wrong, or this happened because that is wrong. And from the days when I worked for him in his construction company, he made sure that I knew the building regulations. And I believe that is my strength today, that I know my building regulations. And that is where I save my clients a lot of money and where I am, I believe, of a big benefit to my clients.
Right. So what inspired you to start Gauteng Property Inspections?
We started it when we closed our construction company, and my dad and I...
What was the reason for closing the company?
My dad was in his 70s and getting too old to run a site. And the biggest reason was our subcontractors were all retiring. So the subcontractors my dad had, the bricklayers, the tilers, the plasterers, they'd all gone to artisan school. They were skilled. They were trained properly. And my dad was struggling to find bricklayers and plasterers and tilers that were up to his standard. And it was becoming very frustrating. And we even went to the Master Builder Association and said, can we not start a training school, train artisans and everything? And they said, no, it's not necessary. So it was just too frustrating, and our quality was very important to us. And we decided, no, this is actually not worth it. And I then said to my dad that we can't let his knowledge go to waste. And we started the inspection company.
Right. So you headed up the inspection company around about that time, right? And how did the many years of experience that you spent in construction shape your approach when it comes to property inspections?
It's very important when I look at reports of other inspectors or I talk to other inspectors. To me, what is important is that my clients understand what is wrong, what happened, why is there a crack in the wall, what happened, and then very importantly, how do you repair it? There's a big difference between repairing and patching. If you patch something, it's going to come back. How do you repair it properly that it doesn't come back? And that is what's important to me. And the big thing with any property, if you look at property investors, they buy the cheapest house in an area, the house that looks the worst.
Yeah.
And why does the house look the worst? Because no maintenance was done. So everything in property boils down to two things. Was the property constructed properly, according to regulations with the correct materials and everything, and has maintenance been done? That's what it all boils down to.